What's up, amigos? So for the past couple days, people have been talking about the new unique leaks that came out, and I thought we'd discuss it here a bit on the channel. So uniques are a tier above legendary. These items are incredibly rare and meant to only drop a few times per season according to the devs. Now we can't really gauge that for hardcore players, especially since there's absolutely going to be methods and glitch farms for a massive amount of drops per hour, so always take this information with a grain of salt. Unique items are meant to be extremely powerful options that could really shape your build for mid and end game, and at one point it was hinted that you could only equip one at a time. I think this would be the best thing for the game and hope it does get confirmed with our dev stream we get in April that has been confirmed by Pez. Now uniques will only be able to be found in World Tier 3, and World Tier 3 has 3 requirements before you can switch to it. The first requirement being you must complete the entire campaign. The second being you have to finish the Cathedral Capstone Dungeon. And the third and final requirement is you must be level 50 to even go into World Tier 3. And then after all 3 of these prereqs are met, you'll be able to change your world tier through the statue in Kyovashad or through the main menu. There will be 4 world tiers available on release and possibly more to come down the road. On top of uniques being able to drop, we will also see nightmare sigils that unlock nightmare dungeons, hell tides, champion monsters with resistance auras, and sacred items. So alongside with unique items, there are sacred and ancestral items. Now I imagine most of the player base who will be playing Diablo 4 have dabbled with Diablo 3. So you can imagine what these items compare to. But for those newer players to the Diablo franchise, and maybe even the genre in a whole, first and foremost, welcome. Secondly, what I'm referencing here are primal and primal ancient items. What these items are upgraded quality items with higher affix rolls, the ancestral being the top-notch item. If they are equivalent to primal ancients, they will have perfect rolls on each affix. This gives the opportunity of crafting and re-rolling absolute god tier items. And if you get one to drop, I imagine it will fetch great items in return or tons of gold for the trade, if they are even tradable. Now ancestral items are only available through World Tier 4, which is the Torment mode, and you must be level 70 plus before you can even attempt farming them. And on top of the extra loot, of course, each world tier will give increased XP gains and gold gains as well, but that comes with way more of a challenge that newer players may have troubles with in the beginning. So earlier last year, a very select group of people were chosen to participate in the endgame pre-alpha test. And before that test took place, we had already gotten a sneak peek at what these uniques would look like. Now unfortunately, those participants were also under a very strict NDA, and any footage that has leaked was almost immediately removed, so even if you do have a source for pre-leaked pre-alpha footage, please note it's pre-alpha, and is almost guaranteed to change for release. In the photo, we were able to see 3 uniques, 2 being class specific for the Druid, you can see that on the bottom right, and 1 being a generic unique that is usable with every class. Obviously, the generic unique does not have any class restriction on it, so you can see it's just based off of a poison damage in general. The Stormwalker's Cudgel gives Hurricane an extra hit effect where it can automatically cast a tornado at the target free of cost. Now note what I said about all of this is subject to change, especially pre-alpha. The Mad Wolf's Glee shown in this photo says poisoned enemies hit by Lacerate or Thrash deal AoE damage, but the new leaked image of Mad Wolf's Glee that's up on the database says, as werewolf, it is now your true form and you gain +2 ranks to all werewolf skills. Now please remember, again, all of this could change for release, but regardless, werewolf form is true form, and they also have an insatiable fury, which is werebear form is now your true form. After testing the Druid in beta, we learned that each ability that was classified as werebear or werewolf would transform you for a brief amount of time, and you would always go back to human form when that time expired. These uniques make it so you always get to stay in thus form, and benefiting from passives you spec into throughout your talent tree. Now honestly, I think druids have the most unique uniques, and yeah, I just said that, it was weird for me too. So barbs have a lot of scaling potential. Between physical damage scaling, and double that in some cases, plus bleed damage scaling, crowd control scaling, and more. They also have uniques that grant slash and bludgeon damage. Barbs are absolute animals in Diablo 4. That was proven with the huge crit builds that creators were showcasing in the beta. And all of this is because of the massive amount of percent damage increase to so-and-so. Barbs, I feel, will be tuned a bit, and that means their aspects and uniques are included. So the Magnum Opus is a great example. It grants increased damage for each point of fury we have, and it's something that would be insane with Whirlwind, as the goal in the Whirlwind build is to always stay capped to maximize damage potential and scaling from other aspects. Hellhammer gives Upheaval, which was the core skill everyone was using for their massive crit builds during beta, an extra damage modifier with the burn damage. Then you have more interesting uniques with Steel Grasp launching additional chains. Now, I think a lot of people will be interested to know that barbs even have a percent damage increase when berserking. Like, what don't barbs have here, I guess, is the real question. Necro is also really cool. They have way more detailed skill changers with their uniques like druids, and I think this is where a bit of favoritism comes in if I'm being honest. Necro is going to have a lot of damage to crowd control units on their unique gear, as well as unique bonuses like blood damage and darkness inflicted enemies. Of course, Necros will also have damage increase for pets, as pets play a huge factor in the D4 Necros. So Black River consuming up to a certain amount of corpses around the initial corpse to deal one massive explosion is really neat, especially when it increases the radius based off the number of corpses consumed. This is going to be one of those crazy screen tearing builds. We already seen in the beta that corpse explosion really did fill screens. Now personally, I like the sound of the Death Speaker's pendant, where casting a Blood Surge also casts mini Blood Surges from your minions. The amount of minions that you can have, I think, is the max of 9. It's going to be a little crazy. Now on the Sorcerers. Now I have to admit, they have the most disappointing uniques by far. They are way too basic, and I feel they need something a bit more for people to have fun with. If I had to choose between the 3 shown here, I think the Staff of Endless Rage has the most unique approach to a skill, and all it really does is launch an additional fireball every 3rd cast. Compare that to the Death Speaker's pendant for Necro, or druids taking permanent werewolf and werebear forms, and you leave yourself wondering why. On top of that, at least you get a really fast fireball, which is interesting because it's definitely something that fireball has always really lacked. Travel time comparative to other spells in every iteration of Diablo, sure, that's what we really need. But looking at the other 2 even, like Incinerate, Shoot, and Embers that are attracted to enemies, unless this has some special animation that's as badass as the Flame Serpent, I don't see this being good or even looking good. And the Staff of Lam, the really only cool thing about this is the name. And no, I'm not joking. Charged bolts pierce but deal less damage. Well, the problem here is charged bolts only shoots about 3 bolts. It's not a screen filler like it should be. Overall, it's just super disappointing to see. So let's go ahead and move on to Rogue. It's definitely an improvement over Sorcerer Uniques, and it being the new class and a hybrid class at that, it definitely has a lot to live up to, I feel. These 3 uniques are definitely interesting, and right off the bat you can tell they're definitely good uniques and have a certain place in builds, unlike some other uniques we just talked about. Now the Word of Hakan grants your Rain of Arrows to have all imbuements active at once. That really does open up a lot for ROA builds. It grants damage to ultimates as well. Now we don't have any idea if this is going to be a flat value or percentage. It rolls with crit damage, with imbued, and plus ranks to all imbuements. I would imagine anywhere between 2 to 3 skills. The Grasp of Shadow grants a lucky hit bonus where if you damage an enemy inflicted with vulnerable status with a marksman or cutthroat skill, it has a chance to summon a shadow clone to mimic your attacks, and it gives damage increase to, guess what, shadow clone. Plus skills to core skills, damage to vulnerable. Like I said, these two alone are definitely better than the Sorcerer Uniques that we seen on screen earlier. Now, you may have noticed, but some Uniques definitely have familiar names. Some of the franchise favorites have returned to reclaim their former glory. Things like Windforce, the rogue unique here that gives you a % chance to double damage and knock back targets. Things like Doombringer, Grandfather, Frostbirds, and Dariels, and the Birch's Cleaver are all coming back. And everyone's favorite, Harlequin. Kudos if you know what I'm talking about. Matter of fact, comment down below if you do know what I'm talking about. You have Uniques paying homage to unique characters in Diablo lore, like the Sorcerer staff from earlier, the Staff of Lam, or memorable moments, all of which are really fun to see and makes me even more excited to possibly see old sets from previous games return as well. So all in all, I am excited to see these Uniques in game. I definitely hope they tweak some because they need to feel unique, hence the quality of the item. If they feel like just an ordinary legendary, people will not feel that sense of enjoyment when they loot one for the first time. And those who play Diablo 3 understand the feeling when you get a Primal Ancient to drop and you just glance at it and forget. As rare as they are, not being able to use 5% of them or only being able to use 5% of them is never fun. They're supposed to incentivize people to respec, try different builds, and increase overall replay value. This is what got me excited when we seen this tweet from March 27th. Joseph states that there are more legendary powers beyond what we've seen during the beta. There is a lot of bizarre, exciting, and totally balanced legendaries to discover when the game goes live in June. He also said the Codex of Power contains less than half of all the possibly legendary powers that can be found in Diablo 4. Plenty more legendary powers can be found later in the game. Now, this rose questions from the community. One in particular is Quins' question here when he asked, why would I use something bizarre over something, for example, that has 300% more damage? And Shroud actually responded to this, and it made me really start thinking. Shroud said maybe not all content is completed through max damage, you might need some bizarre builds to overcome certain obstacles, some copium maybe, but you never know. Now I definitely think it's a stretch, but imagine if the devs did put something sneaky in the Diablo 4 that required certain abilities or builds. It wouldn't be the first time that the devs put something secret into the game. I think there's a lot that will be answered in April on the next dev stream, and until then we have a lot to plan out with these leaks, and maybe they make it to full release with no change, maybe they don't. What do you all think? Do you think sorcerers will be shafted, or will they get better uniques that could create more build opportunities for them? In the meantime, I'll be here theory crafting, delivering news as it comes in, and be waiting patiently until I can enter Sanctuary. So until next time amigos, take care.